Hey guys. All right, so today we're going to go back to the comments. Desco Production says, hello, your videos about the JD-08 are very useful for me. Many thanks for that. We'll want to make a video to explain how do the LFOs work. Please, it would be great. So have no fear. We're going to go to that right now. So LFO stands for a low frequency oscillator. Basically, it's an oscillator that is inaudible and acts as a modulator for other components of the synthesizer. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the LFO section. We're going to move from left to right, and I'm going to explain each function. So number one, we have an LFO selector. So there are two total LFOs with the JD-08, and you can vacillate between 1 and 2. Right now, I'll just stick with LFO number 1, and I'll only deal with one layer at the time. I'll only deal with one layer, that being layer A, for a completely blank patch. All right, so moving on. We have the rate of the LFO. This basically controls the frequency of the LFO. So let's just talk about that for a quick second, right? So if I'm looking at the waveform generator here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to up the amplitude of the LFO. So now all of a sudden we start hearing some pitch fluctuations there. The reason that that's happening is because of the rate set by the LFO. Okay, all right. The higher the rate, the higher the frequency. The lower the rate, lower the frequency. So we're still hearing pitch fluctuations, but they're very, very gradual. Let's up this. Cool. All right, now added bonus here before we get to the delay. So the palette sliders here, because I'm on tone A, whatever function I just so happen to be using at the time, I can access that very function with a more intricate palette slider here. Again, if I touch the rate and then I go to the tone A palette slider, it controls the rate. It's just a forward-facing control. All right, so now let's go over to delay. All right, so what happens here is if I dial this down, you instantaneously hear the LFO take effect. If I delay the LFO, the LFO doesn't take effect instantaneously. It takes a moment for it to, it takes a moment for you to hear the effects. Okay, moving on. This is not to be, delay is not to be confused with fade. Fade is actually a pretty cool feature because the effect of the LFO fades in gradually. So I'll dial it down. So no fade at the moment, but again, I'm going to use my palette slider here. If I dial this up, then all of a sudden you'll hear the LFO effect just kind of fade in gradually. Here we go again. Let's dial that all the way up. And as I hold the key down, the effect of the LFO becomes more prominent as we go along. So that's the difference between delay and fade. Oh, and by the way, if I take, I'm going to go back to delay here. Now notice here when I dial the delay dial all the way up, you got a prompt that said REL, which is short for release. Now you won't hear the effect of the LFO until after the key is released. Now, that was kind of subtle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my TVA and I'm going to up the release of the LFO. I'm sorry, I'm going to up the release of the waveform. So then that way you can hear what's happening after I release the key. And it just kind of trails off, right? Kind of like a buzzing fly. Weird. All right, let's give it a little bit more. Again, you don't hear the LFO just yet. Only after release. So weird. All right, anyway, moving on. Let's go to the waveforms in and of themselves. Again, another self-explanatory feature of the JD-08's LFO section. So right now we're dealing with a sine wave at the moment. So now so essentially what's happening here is we're dealing with an LFO that's moving in these perfunctory 360-degree cycles. A sine wave, you know. Anyone who's taken up pre-calculus or anyone who's taken up pre-calculus or trigonometry is fully aware of how sine waves look. Now, let's see. Now, let's take a look at our sawtooth wave. So what will happen here is we'll hear a gradual increase in pitch and then a sudden decline. Makes me think of Mega Man. All right, so now square waveforms, sudden increases and then sudden decreases, as opposed to them being gradual. Bum 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 bum. Like a siren, I guess you would say. All right, now we have more of a sample and hold iteration of this, which is essentially the same thing as we saw before. The only difference is that the frequency and amplitudes are going to be more randomized. Okay, all right, and now we have this random LFO. So this one has more of a, how you say it, an electrocardiogram waveform. So you'll hear a gradual increase in amplitude and a gradual decline in random intervals. And there we have it, right? Okay. Moving on, offset. So how this works is offset essentially just changes where the LFO starts. So negative offset, positive offset. And then 0 is our default value. All right, now key trigger. With the key trigger on, the LFO does not start until after I press the key, or should I say, I hit a key and I trigger the LFO. The LFO starts at the LFO starts at 0 degrees, and then we go from there, right? Or 180, or wherever our offset just so happens to be stationed at the moment. Now, if I turn the key trigger off, the LFO is running in the background, not unlike a modular synthesizer. It's just constantly running. And when I press a key, you just so happen to hear where the LFO is at the moment. So right now the cycle is going. And when I hit the key, I'll go back to the sine wave here. And when I hit the key, you just so happen to hear where it is. So right then, it started at a higher frequency. If I press it again, it starts at a lower frequency. But again, it's not necessarily starting. I'm just so happen to catch it where it happens to be. Think of it as catching the LFO with its pants down, right? Okay, all right. So that pretty much explains how the LFOs work. Now, the LFO is applicable to the various sections of the JD-08. So say, for example, if I come over here to the TVF or the frequency cutoff component of the JD-08? Well, what's going to happen here is, let's see, I'm going to up the amplitude of the LFO, and I'm going to make sure I'm selecting number 1. What's going to happen here is it's going to wiggle this frequency cutoff knob, so you'll hear a... So just to give you an example of that, that's essentially what it's doing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start the frequency cutoff here at its lowest position. I'll up the LFO again. And I'll just have the LFO open and close the filter. That's right, because the amplitudes have to be absolute. Let's see, let's go back over here. Okay, and that's how that works. All right, same difference with the TVF. Now, not to be confused with the frequency cutoff, this just affects the overall amplitude of your waveform. So if I select LFO number 1, dial the LFO up. Actually, let me get rid of the LFO here so that and so what's happening right now is that the LFO is affecting the level of the oscillator. Now it's very gradual, and the reason that that's happening is because the LFO is not allowing for the TVA to reach its maximum amplitude. Actually, no, it's because I have the frequency cut off. Here we are. So let me try that again. There we go. Almost like a sidechain effect in a way. And again, you can always synchronize your LFOs as well. So, and again, this is just affecting the overall amplitude of the waveform or the oscillator in and of itself. And so, for the most part, those are the LFO basics. All right, guys, so there you have it. LFO basics of the JD-08. In future exercises, I'll more than likely show you how to use the LFO practically, maybe in the context of a song, the context of an arrangement, something along those lines. But either which way, I'll leave it at this for right now. Go out, experiment with it. Let me know what you guys come up with. Also, if you guys have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be sure to get back with you. All right, you guys take care.